Rapala. Look at how pretty these little guys are. Oh man, boy, they're squirmy. These guys are tough, man. They're tough little fish to catch in the spring like this. They are just a ton of fun.
Let's take a quick look at Minnesota's philosophy when it comes to managing their stock trout fisheries and maximizing the amount of fun people can have by catching these all over the state.
In those Cuyuna mine pit lakes, the stocking started in the 1980s because the mining continued, I think, into the 50s and 60s, and then there's sort of the mining companies abandoned those pits and they started filling up with water in the 60s and 70s, and by the 1980s there was enough water. People were like, oh, we got some new lakes now, so maybe we could throw some trout in there. So that started in the 80s, and there's been pretty much annual stocking in most of those mine pits from starting in the 1980s through today. Yeah, that trout stocking is to provide angling opportunity for different species that you wouldn't have that opportunity to fish for in this area. So we provide the rainbow trout mainly fishery, and some brook trout, and occasionally some brown trout fishing as well in those mine pit lakes. Anglers need a trout stamp to fish for trout in Minnesota, so that provides some extra money for the DNR to raise and stock those trout and manage those trout fisheries. So that trout stamp money goes directly towards that trout fishery management. And so a lot of people are coming in the area for that, and then it's expanded to these new mountain bike trails on the tailing pits, or the tailing piles between the pits. And the clear water is a really popular scuba diver. So an area that was, iron mine pits that aren't too attractive has actually turned into a real recreation opportunity between fishing and boating and diving and mountain biking, all using this former landscape from iron mining, sort of a way to take advantage of a previous industrial use of the landscape. DNR's got the role of both protecting natural resources, but also providing the opportunities. So between stocking programs to provide fisheries and also the accesses and the public land to access those fisheries is sort of the other role of the DNR. So it's both protecting and enhancing natural resources and providing the opportunity for anglers and everyone else to enjoy the outdoors and take advantage of Minnesota.
All right, Dave, get your game face on.
I'm ready. As much as Daniel likes to eat these trout, there's other things in this pit that like to eat trout too.
Yeah.
In our area of the country, we've got big largemouth bass in here, some nice smallmouth bass, but you know what? We also have really big northern pike, and this would not be an unusual place to catch a 20-pound pike. And guess what they're eating? And you guessed it, trout.
These mine pits in our area have a wealth of opportunity, not only for fishing, but mountain biking trails. This is like a mecca for mountain bikers. They got trails all over the place back here. Scuba diving is another huge thing that a lot of people do. And the funny thing is, a couple years ago, a buddy of mine were out in a mine pit not too far from here, and we were scuba diving. And I saw the biggest largemouth bass I've ever seen. And that wasn't the weird thing about it. The weird thing was, it was an albino, pure white. That's no lie. That's when you're looking around, you're like, where's the camera, right?
So, what else do you do with a big hole in the ground besides letting it fill with water and stocking it with fish? Well, back on August 19th, 1957, the Portsmouth Mine near Crosby, Minnesota, just a few miles from where we're fishing, was the launch site for Man-High 2, the second of 3 top-secret manned flights in a U.S. Air Force balloon project that preceded the space race between the U.S. and Russia. The goals were to see if a manned, helium-filled balloon could reach the outer edge of the stratosphere and to study the effects of cosmic rays and zero gravity on humans. The fragile balloon was filled at the bottom of the deep mine, where it was protected by the wall-like surroundings from being buffeted by winds. And piloted by Dr. David Simons inside a telephone booth-sized gondola, the balloon rose to a record height of 20 miles above the Earth, with the flight lasting a total of 32 hours. Barely 1 month later, the Russians launched Sputnik, and the space race was on. Even though the Russians were first into space with rocket-propelled manned spacecraft, the earlier balloon flights proved that pressurized suits worked in space, giving the fledgling NASA space program a leg up on their Russian competition. And it all began at the bottom of a big hole in the ground, which is today 400-foot deep Portsmouth Mine Pit Lake, the deepest lake in Minnesota other than Lake Superior.